According to officials, monsoon rains triggered flash flooding on Tuesday at a village in the southern part of the state.
Yeah, the Rio Ruidoso River rose to an unprecedented 6 meters or 20 feet, shattering its previous record by over 1.5 meters. At least 85 Swift River rescues in the area were carried out by rescue crews, including people trapped in their cars and their homes. Ruidoso's mayor spoke about the flash flooding.
It didn't look like it was going to be this massive, but it was. It hit hard, it hit fast. We did breach all of our bridges. We did lose some more homes. We have some folks that are missing. We're looking for them right now.
Let's bring in CNN meteorologist Derek Van Dam joining us live now from the CNN Weather Center in Atlanta. I mean, some of these images, that home being swept away, being carried down the river, I mean, that is unbelievable. And then you have stories about RVs being swept away as well. 3 people killed, 2 of them children. It's always heartbreaking, especially when you think about what happened out of Texas. Really heartbreaking to see this happening somewhere else in another state as well. Derek, just walk us through what we know so far.
Yeah, it's another tragic flash flooding event here in the United States, this time over the western U.S. This is what we mean by flash flood. This is a literal wall of water, and you can see with the Rio Ruidoso River as it picks up the debris from the surrounding area. So this has been exacerbated by a wildfire that was in the region back in 2024. So this left a burn scar. And then on top of that, a heavy amount of rain in a topographical area, so an elevated region with mountainous landscape, funnels all this water down into the valleys below. And unfortunately, that's where people live, right? So there's a lot of information on this graphic, but what I want to point your attention to on these North American monsoon flash floods, that's what that was. Burn scars make these areas very susceptible, and also the steep terrain. So that's helping funnel and concentrate the precipitation. So how does this work exactly? Well, we get the wildfires, right? So that happened last year. And then what that does is it creates kind of an impermeable surface at the top levels of the ground, right? So the water cannot get absorbed into the ground like it normally would be because of the recent wildfires. Eventually, gravity wins with the topography, and that land slides, and it picks up everything in its path, just like you saw in the video a moment ago. So what you're looking at is a river graph. This shows all the various spikes in the river gauge here over the past few days. This is the most recent one where it crested at its record-shattering 20 feet, or roughly 6 meters. So that's just really incredible amounts of precipitation funneled into this region. There's another chance of flash flooding across that area, another watch hoisted by the National Weather Service. Equally as important, but a different type of flash flood threat here exists across the Mid-Atlantic. New to CNN, this area, the level 3 of 4, where you see that darker shading of red, that has been expanded to include Baltimore, as well as Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia. These areas have the potential for flash flooding, but the difference here is there's no burn scars in the area. This is all because of the impermeable surface that really is the concrete jungle across the Mid-Atlantic of the United States, not able to absorb this amount of water. Zane, Bianna.
Derek Van Dam live for us there. Thank you so much.
Well, the mayor of Kerrville, Texas, says the rising death toll after last week's catastrophic flooding breaks his heart, like all of ours. Officials now say at least 119 people were killed and more than 160 are still missing after the disaster that unfolded July 4th weekend.
The Cajun Navy has been on the ground here in Texas aiding in recovery efforts. Keep in mind, this is a group that responds to disasters all across the United States. And members tell us that what they're encountering here in Texas is among some of the worst that they've ever seen. Joining us now is the Vice President of the United Cajun Navy, Brian Trasher. Brian, thanks so much for being with us. So yesterday we heard from local officials, Kerr County Police, saying that no one had been found alive since Friday in the county. Do you think it's likely that a survivor would be found at this point, given that we're now 6 days from when this disaster unfolded?
Why did you cancel your Midjourney subscription?
I found this hidden AI that does everything I want for a one-time cost.
I think unlikely is an optimistic word. Once you get past the 48 to 60 hour mark, the survivability index goes way, way down. We always hold out hope for a miracle, but as to your point, after the 6th day, it'd be unlikely that someone, if they didn't drown, was able to survive just out in the heat and with wildlife and not having any food or water.
Yeah, and we've heard from volunteers and first responders who tell us that that doesn't change the fact that they hope to find survivors and at the very least to bring solace to families whose loved ones are currently missing. So the work itself doesn't change and the motivation doesn't change. I do wonder how long you think this operation is going to take place, how long the Cajun Navy plans to be here.
I think we can be there as long as the EOC wants our help. We've been having a K-9 team on the ground for at least since Saturday, I think, and they're responsible for at least a dozen recoveries. Unfortunately, nobody that was alive, but again, those families will get closure with their loved ones their remains at least being found. We just brought in one of our superhero teams, the Mountain Mule Packers from North Carolina. These are the mules that were going up the mountains. We met them when we were out there after Hurricane Helene, and we were having trouble getting power and Starlinks up into the mountains. The treetop cover was too heavy for helicopters to land, and these mules brought up power packs and Starlinks all the way up to these little mountain towns, and we're able to get the missing person list go from like 4,000 under 1,000 in just a couple of days, just because people were getting powered up and connected.
Yeah, it's immensely helpful to have that kind of ability to do that. And it just kind of illustrates for folks at home what the terrain is like here. You've got rivers, mountains, dense brush. I also wanted to ask you about specifically what it's like for your crews to go into areas like that, because the heat is now sweltering. You've got, at least in the last few days, there had been the danger of more rain. And on top of that, it's just the amount of hours, the residual exhaustion for your teams. Talk to us about what it's like when they head out there.
It's everything you described. We made the decision early on that given the sensitive nature of the type of missing persons we were looking for, we were only going to use what we call special ops volunteers, or mostly combat veterans. They did deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, so they're used to the heat, they're used to seeing horrible things. And they're emotionally and mentally tough enough to handle it and do the job and finish the mission.
Brian Trasher, thank you so much for giving us that context. Appreciate the work that the United Cajun Navy has been doing here.
Yeah, thanks CNN. Y'all have been all over us since day one. We appreciate you.
Of course. So we want to remember the victims here in Texas as we head to break. People like retired veteran Bill Venus, a father of 4 who served more than 30 years in the U.S. Army. Venus' son traveled all the way from Maryland to personally search for his father and confirms to CNN that he did find him. Venus Jr. told People magazine, quote, "He was a hero. God would have been better off taking me because he had a whole lot more work he could have done in this world."